Hello, welcome back. In this lecture demonstration, I want to provide a solution to our weather program that I talked about in our previous challenge. So let's start up code blocks and create a project. I'm going to name this project Weather. And again, just a reminder, this application is going to allow us to get yearly and monthly averages or yearly totals and monthly averages for rainfall amounts. This weather, and there we go. Okay, so right at the top, you want to provide comments telling you what the program is. Again, this program is going to be finding yearly totals, yearly average, and monthly average for several years of rainfall data, 5 years essentially. So right at the top, I'm going to define a couple constants. And we haven't gone over the define preprocessor directive in detail yet, but you're familiar with this. It's not real complicated, so I'm going to include it, and I want to write nice quality code. So I'm just going to define one that's called months, going to be equal to 12, and a constant. You can also use the constant modifier. And I'm going to also define one that's called years equal to 5. That's where we're going to start. And the first thing we really want to do in our main function is we want to create our array, which is a two-dimensional array, and we want to initialize the data. So we're going to initialize rainfall amounts, rainfall data for, say, 2010 to 2015, or 2011 to 2015 or something. And so we know how to create a two-dimensional array. We just specify the data type name, and I think this should be a float because floats have decimal spots and rainfall amounts can be decimal. So we're going to just say float. We're going to name it rain, and then we're going to specify that we want to have 5 rows and 12 columns. So we're just going to say years, which is our constant, and months. And then we're going to initialize it. We've declared it of that size, and now we want to initialize it. And you can initialize it by having brackets, just like that. And then you can have inside brackets for each row. We could also make this array a constant if we wanted to, but we're not going to. Now I have already done this data, and I don't want to type in, what would this be? This would be 10 times 50, or 12 times 5, that would be 60 elements. I don't want to type in 60 elements right now because it's going to take up time and you're just going to sit there and fall asleep. So I'm going to copy and paste in my initialization and initialize some data. And this is just some dummy data. It might not be correct, but you'll see that we have brackets for each row, and so we have 5 rows. We're separating each row by a comma, and we have these curly braces inside there for each row. And then inside the curly braces, we're separating each monthly value by a comma. So we're separating by rows by commas, and we're separating values inside rows by commas. Here's a bunch of yearly rainfall amounts. So for example, this first row would represent year 2011, and the first column would be January. So in January of 2011, we had 4.3 inches of rain. Down here, if we were to look at let's say look at 6.7, this would be for the year 2012-13 for the month of March. We had 6.7 inches of rain. Right? So you can see how this represents years and months for rainfall. Now that we've initialized all of our data, we can actually initialize or create our other local variables. So we're going to just create a year and a month because this will help keep our yearly totals or keep our year straight and our month straight. So I'm just going to say year, month. I'm going to create them on the same line. And I'm also going to create a couple floats, subtotal, and total. Subtotal will be yearly totals. Total will be the total rainfall so that I can get the yearly average. And we'll also figure out how to get monthly averages. So the first thing I need to do is I need to have a for loop that's going to print out our rainfall for a particular year. So first I'm going to print out on a single line, I'm just going to print out year, and I'm going to add a tab to it to make it better formatted. Let's add 2 tabs. We'll see how this looks once I display it. And then I'm going to put rainfall, and I'm going to put that in inches, and I'm going to add a line feed. And again, you would want to test this to see what it looks like. And then I'm going to go into my loop. So what do I want to do? I want to go, in order to calculate the subtotals for each year and display them, I want to go through all of the rows, all of the years, and then for each year, I want to go through all the months because I need to add the months up. So our outer loop is going to start off with the first year, which is 2011, but it's actually 0 inside the array because arrays are 0 indexed. And I'm going to go all the way, and I'm also going to initialize another local variable inside here. So I wanted to demonstrate how you can, remember for loops are very flexible. You can actually create other variables in the for statement. I didn't need to create a variable that's used outside of the for statement on lines 19 or 20. So here I'm just going to create a variable called total, or initialize my total variable. And then I'm going to go through until my year is less than my years, which is constant. And I'm going to increment my counter loop control variable year. So the year and the month are loop control variables on lines 19. And this is going to represent my outer loop. It's a two-dimensional array, so I'm going to need an inner loop as well. And my inner loop is going to go through each month. So here I'm going to say month equals 0. Subtotal for each month is also equal to 0. Initialize it. And I'm going to go through until I'm done with all my months. And I'm going to increment my loop control variable. And this will be my inner loop. And so in my inner loop, I can actually determine the subtotals. I don't need to display anything. So all I'm going to do in my inner loop is I'm going to add to my subtotal for each year. My subtotal is my yearly total. And here I'm just going to access the array. My array name is going to be rain. So I can just say rain sub year. So this would be all for 2011 initially because of my outer loop. And then for each month. And I'm adding to it. So I'm saying subtotal equals subtotal plus rain plus the array value. So it's going to go through, in the inner loop, go through all the months for that year, create a subtotal of it. Now I want to display the subtotal outside of the loop because I only want to display the subtotal 5 times for 5 years. So here I can add a little nice little print statement that helps format the data a bit and also helps display it properly. Now I'll probably want to, this will be the year and the subtotal, so we'll probably want to add to the subtotal, I would say a couple tabs, but we'll see what it looks like. So /t/t. And then the only other thing we want to do is we want to add to the total because we need to have the total for all years. So here we can just say total plus equals subtotal. And then you'll notice the subtotal is actually getting reinitialized every time you go into the inner loop, so we don't have to set that back. And here we just want to make sure the indentation is good. Again, notice my indentation for each blocks. And I actually don't need the brackets on 27 and 29 since it's a single statement, but I'm going to leave them there. Now that I've done that, I can actually, after I printed out the yearly rainfall, or the rainfall for each year, I can now display the yearly average because I have enough data. I have the total rainfall in each month rainfall. So here I'm just going to display the yearly average, which is just the total divided by the years. So we'll add another print statement here. Again, another good place to test. So let's go ahead and build this, make sure we don't have any errors since it is a lot of code. And we have an undeclared variable year, even though it's right here. So what's going on? I had an error. I have an error up on line 17. I never ended my initialization. So I had to have a semicolon on line 17, which wasn't recognized in the declaration of the variables on line 19. The other thing you'll notice with compiler errors, when you see a compiler error, it's sometimes misrepresentative of what the actual error is. So in this case, it told me I had an error on line 19, but really what was causing the error was the previous statement that didn't have an ending semicolon. Let's run this and see if we can see the yearly rainfall, see how it's formatted. So here we go, year 2010 rainfall in inches. So we probably added too many tabs when we displayed the subtotals. And then the yearly average is 39.4. So we probably want to fix that by just getting rid of a tab here. Remember, a tab, you can add a tab in your output by using escape sequence /t. So that looks pretty good, at least. Now we have to have another loop that's going to display the monthly averages. So before I display the monthly averages, I want to print everything out on a single line. So I'm just going to print out some information using printf. I'm going to print out my monthly averages and add 2 line feeds so it's formatted better. And then I'm going to print out my other information. I don't need 2 lines for this, I don't think. So we'll just do it all in 1 line for all the months. And we're just going to separate the months by a few spaces and then add a new line. So we're going to do the same when we go through our for loop. Now we need another for loop now to get the monthly averages. So in this for loop, the outer loop is going to start at month. Instead of going by each row, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through each column because I need to get the monthly average. So I'm going to start and I'm going to go through each column, which is January, February, March, represent columns. And for each column, I'm going to go through all the years for that column. And that will give me and then I can use the subtotal and the total again variables. So here I'm going to say month equals 0, month is less than months, and month plus plus. And then my inner loop is going to go through the years. So here I'm just going to say for year equals 0. And remember that I also want to reinitialize my subtotal. So here I'm going to say subtotal equals 0 because I want to start at 0 once I get my new year. Go through all of the years and then increment the year. The year leap control variable. And inside here, I want to put in my subtotal, which is just going to be equal to my array for year and months. And so it's important to understand what's going on here is we switched the way that we're iterating through the array. In the first loops, we iterated by going through each row and looking at each column. In this one, we're actually going through each column and looking at that specific row. So because we're calculating monthly averages. So we get the subtotal, and then we just want to print out our subtotal divided by years for that month so that it matches up with our output on line 37. So we're just going to do something like this, and we're going to do it with 4.1 format, subtotal divided by years. And we add a couple spaces so that try to line it up as best we can. Might want to add another space. And then at the end of this, after we've printed everything out, we can just add a line feed for readability, and we're done. And that will give us the monthly averages. Because we got all the subtotals and we divided it by the years. Now let's build this. No errors, and run it. And now we'll see additional output for monthly totals, or monthly averages. So here we see that, monthly averages, and the format doesn't line up real good. So we probably want to, it all depends because of the characters output. We actually probably want to decrease the space. Only add 1 space there. Let's see if that does a better job. Now when we run it, let's see if it looks better. Because you want to be able to tie up each month with the averages. That's a little bit better. We still get a little off because the months are 3 characters and the integers are 2. We mainly got screwed up between October and November because there's only 1 space between. Oh, now I can fix that by just going like that. So that should make the format all nice. But you can see how we're just printing out rainfall amounts for years and monthly averages. I hope this got you familiar with 2-dimensional arrays, how to iterate through them, how to assign arrays, and how to access data. Thank you.